Liz, thank you.
Should we stop share? It's under me. There. Great. All right. Thank you. Good morning. So nice to see so many of you in person. Those of you I've met before, it's nice to see you again. And those of you I haven't met, perhaps we can meet after the meeting. Before we jump into the marketing material, just a quick little personal story. My husband is from Rochester, born and raised here, go Rockets. His mom was a Mayo Clinic nurse for 40 years. And can you guys hear me okay? The echo is real. And his dad got his first job at the Chateau Theater as the manager for the movie theater, and then worked selling advertisement for the Post Bulletin. He was moved on to sell advertising for the radio station, the local radio station, and in his retirement years, he counted cookies at the Canadian Honker. So I've had a wonderful opportunity to come back and forth to Rochester for many happy family occasions, but this project has allowed me to rediscover Rochester through the retail lens, and it's been a wonderful experience. So thank you. Thank you. So let's jump in with a quick orientation to Rochester. So from a geographic standpoint, Rochester is located in the heart of the Midwest. Many of you know that it's just over an hour's drive from the Twin Cities, but it's also within a day's drive from major metros such as Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago, Des Moines, Omaha, and Sioux Falls. And this is important as there's no sales tax on clothing and shoes in the state of Minnesota. It really opens it up for a cross-border retail trade, but also from a expanding retailer's perspective, we look at what would be a natural evolution that's not too far away to manage either our workforce or our supply chain logistics. Rochester has many accolades. Not only is it the home to the #1 hospital in the nation, it's also a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family. It's a great place to be a working woman. It's constantly ranked as one of the top 3 most innovative cities and a great place to be an entrepreneur. And converging all of these together, it has proven to be a recession-resilient community. There's over 3 million visitors a year, with annual spending at restaurants, retails, and hotels over $478 million, and continues to be a great place to live, work, and play. So a quick view of the Rochester landscape here in the center. Yeah, this works, right? Yeah, here in the center, you can see kind of in the heart of the city is the healthcare facility, the healthcare community. Nestled just around it is the hotel stock, an ever-growing population of residential, marked here in the purple, with an office community that networks its way through the downtown, the parking that supports the infrastructure of downtown, and then the retail and entertainment is marked here in orange. And really what you see is the creation of, or the start of 3 retail districts. You have historic 3rd Street, you have the heart of the city, anchored by the Galleria shops at University Square and the Kaler shops, and then you have the Queen City district and the Castle community here. So let's take a deep dive into Rochester, starting kind of from that 30,000 square foot view. Before we can really understand Rochester, we have to understand it on the basis of comparison. And so we worked with Gurney Research to identify 3 cities that we thought were comparable, and they're comparable from a geographic location, but they're also comparable because they have a like visitor population. So they have a strong residential, strong workforce, but they also have a visitor population either coming for medical or for education. And when you compare Rochester to Sioux Falls, Iowa City, and Lincoln, Nebraska, what you see is that the strong healthcare workforce really proves to generate a higher household income, greater established wealth, and a higher education. So in summary, Rochester really stacks up well when you compare it to its geographic peers. Getting into more of the nitty-gritty of the business, we know that Rochester is home to the #1 largest employer in the state of Minnesota, with over 10 million square feet of medical facilities. There's 36,000 people that work administrative and healthcare staff downtown, and over 4,000 physicians. Steeped in the tradition of healthcare, Rochester is also home to a city of innovation, with over 10 multinationals opening in the last 5 years. And these are many of the innovative companies that have grown out of Rochester. Rochester is a vehicular city, and access point primarily by car is driven either on the 22,000 cars a day on Broadway, or the 13,800 cars that come in along Second. So Broadway and Second as a key access points. It might be the overall square footage of Rochester is 3.1 million square feet, with about 45% of that located in the downtown, about 1.4 million square feet, with 52% of office projects happening since 2000 being located downtown, and another 145,000 square feet under development. This graphic here really shows us where the lion's share of that development is in the heart of downtown and the nearby core. So let's pause for a moment and talk about what is the downtown worker looking for. Quite simply, they're looking for those convenience and services, and this is pre-COVID and post-COVID. Those are convenience and services that you can't get online. They're looking for a place to get their hair cut. They're looking for a quick place to get their nails done. They're looking for services to care for their pets or care for their children. They're looking for food solutions, quick, healthy, for on-premise or off-premise. They're looking for food solutions for a place to gather after work, to convene. From an apparel standpoint, they're either looking for that one piece that they really need to make that sale or to make that appointment, or they're looking for that surprise and delight of perhaps something they've had their eye on sale. And we call that retail therapy. Seeding the workforce is education. And Rochester is home to over 7,000 students, with 5,000 students from the Mayo Clinic and another 1,000 students from the University of Minnesota in Rochester. There's over 1,500 degrees issued annually and 1 million touch points. And a touch point is simply an educational touch point, either online or in person. So what are students looking for? Students are looking for fit, fun, and food. From a food standpoint, they're looking for quick serve, they're looking for value proposition, they're looking for something as perhaps an alternative to coffee. They're also looking for a place to gather. And important to note is the Rochester student has a much broader age spread than a typical student. So we have the younger student, which is below 21, so 18 to 21, and then we have that student that's 21 to 25, perhaps that more mature student. They're all looking for places to gather, but the over 21 student population is looking for just breweries, distilleries, and food hall. The under 21 is looking for more of those entertainment places. Call it pickleball, axe throwing, more traditional bowling. They're also looking for apparel, comfort apparel, but then as they matriculate through the student, they're looking for that first piece for that interview for their next job. So the first part of the customer segment is the workforce. The second part is the visitor. So Rochester is host to over 3 million visitors annually, with a 5% annual growth trajectory. The Rochester visitor comes from over 50 states, 130 countries, with international population coming from the Middle East, China, Latin America, Canada, and Europe. So how does the Rochester guest arrive? They either arrive by car or by plane. And that would be either at the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, which is the 11th largest airport in the United States with over 35 million visitors, or to the Rochester Airport, which has 370,000 annual visitors, either from a commercial flight direct from Chicago, Minneapolis, Atlanta, or Fort Myers, or from one of their many private planes. Our Rochester guest stays at one of the 56 properties here in one of the over 6,000 hotel rooms, which continues to grow. Rochester hotels have grown at 11% since 2019, with another 994 keys under development. Now, the majority of the Rochester retail, or excuse me, the Rochester customer and visitor comes for the Mayo Clinic. Over 64% come from the Mayo Clinic, with 16% coming from convention and visitors, or for convention and visitors and sporting events, 20% business, leisure, and other. What's a guest? So a guest to Rochester could be somebody coming from local in the region, or could be coming from around the globe. So they could be coming to one of the 280,000 events that the RDA puts on, or they could be one out of the 224,000 annual visitors that come to the Rochester Mayo Civic Center, which is host to the largest indoor ballroom. We have over four sports teams here, with 130,000 visitors attending the sporting events. There's 85 miles of paved trail. There's 100 city parks, and there's 37 golf courses for those of you who like to golf within an hour's drive. So what is the Rochester visitor looking for? Overwhelmingly, the Rochester visitor is looking for something unique. They're looking for either a boutique that has a unique curated collection of national or international brands, or they're looking for something that says shop local. So made in Rochester, made in Minnesota, made in the Midwest, a nod to our culture, a nod to our heritage, and a nod to our community. They're looking for the same services that the worker is looking for, but perhaps on a shorter term basis. So they're looking for drop-in childcare, drop-in pet care, and at time to time, drop-in elder care. They're looking for technology support. The Rochester guest is also looking for a place to leisure. They're looking for a bookstore, a museum, a small respite in between appointments or in between meetings. The Rochester guest is looking for a place to set up shop for the day. So we saw a big need for co-working here as well. So that brings us to the third segment of the customer, which is the downtown resident. And traditionally, we've had a difficult time talking about the downtown resident because many of the residents that live here are transient residents. They're here for 6 months as a patient, or they're here for 3 years as a student, and they don't change their driver's license, so they're not picked up by census data. So the traditional 1, 3, and 5 mile population that we see here at 14,000 to 112,000 doesn't necessarily capture that. So with the help of the RDA, we're really able to put a greater face on downtown retail. One of the important things to note is while we're still trying to capture the residential demographics is the growth rate. So downtown has grown at almost double the rate of Olmsted County, with the population of Olmsted County has grown 12%, downtown's population has grown 28%. There's been over 869 new multifamily units within the half a mile radius since 2010, and 1,548 new multifamily units in a 1.5 mile radius since 2010. So let's talk about the 4 faces of downtown. So the first face is the student. It's the undergraduate student, the international researcher, the postdocs, the medical. Typical age is 18 to 35. Income is 25 to 85,000. Household size is 1, single, and typically they rent their apartment. And what we found is this student population ranges from folks who are coming from Rochester to folks who are coming from around the world. So they have a vast array of wants and needs. They're really looking to spend their money on coffee, on fitness, on takeout, on thrift stores, fast fashion, and technology. Whereas the resident profile 2 is the matriculation. So getting that first job, those young professionals, those late stage grad students, age 25 to 45, income 60 to 250,000. Now your household size is growing. People are coupling up, and they tend to primarily rent, but are now dipping their toe in the pool of residential ownership. They're well-traveled in their experience. They're willing to spend more on local and authentic, and they're very social, going out 3 to 5 nights a week. The residential profile number 3, or the third face of downtown, is that young urban family. So here you see aging between 35 to 50, income 75 to 150,000, household size 2 to 3, and they typically own their home. And this residential population is simply looking for everything that you need when you get a pet, have a kid, and buy a house. So they're looking for all those services and all the furnishings that support those needs. The residential population, the fourth residential population is the empty nester. And that empty nester is either a recent person whose kids are at school and they've sold their condominium, or excuse me, they've sold their house and they're coming downtown. They're widowed or they're divorced. Their typical age is 60, income 50 to 120,000, household size 1 to 2, and they primarily rent. And their motives are, they're very experiential based and they're very focused on their children. So they're looking for all of those things that support travel and experience. So luggage, quick apparel for traveling, and then that gift for their child or for their grandchild. So I talked a bit about the growth of the residential population and how important it is to understand that that really makes up a large share of our downtown customer base. There's been 1,100 market rate apartments added since 2010. And we know that there's a future demand for 3,200 market rate apartments and separately 2,400 affordable multi-unit apartments. We mentioned earlier that it's important that Rochester is a vehicular city. People treat their car like their purse, but in downtown, people really want to walk. And that is represented in these walking scores here, where our high score of 95 walk score is located in the heart of downtown. So I got granular with what each profile is looking for, but just to step back and talk about what the downtown resident is looking for is they're looking for neighborhood goods. They're looking for hardware stores. They're looking for the same services that the worker and the visitor are looking for that are nearby, whether that's pet care or child care. They're looking for a place to call their own coffee shop where everyone knows them by name, or their own bistro where everyone knows them by name, or the boutique that knows exactly what their style is. They're also looking for the many fitness services that are out there, whether it's fitness on the weekends or fitness before, during, or after the work hour. So let's talk about the Rochester retail scene. So from a top down, Rochester has 3 million square feet of power centers surrounding the urban core, with 1.2 million square feet of community centers, 1.1 million square foot regional mall, and 500,000 square feet downtown. Rochester has a collection of over 74 restaurants, 63 retail shopping centers, and 13 service providers. And it's important to note that many of these are owned and operated by independents that have been here for over 20 years. The heart and soul of, the main of retail starts in the heart of the city, in this green district here, with the Castle community, Queen City community to the north, and the historic third to the south. What's interesting about Rochester retail is it's trifurcated. So we have retail located on the subway, the street, and the skyway, and that's different than a lot of other urban cores. The advantage of that is that it really creates a 365-day climate-controlled community that increases the circulation of the downtown population. So whether you have a stroller or in a wheelchair or just don't feel like putting your jacket on and getting your feet wet, one of the skyway or subway connectors is key. Downtown retail continues to grow as well. We found that historical demand of downtown retail is $440 million. And the way that we arrived at that is you take the visitor, the resident, and the workforce, the number of that customer times their average spend, and that helps us to generate an average sale of 444 million in spending potential, of which we've estimated that we can capture about 322 million, and we're missing 118 million. We call that the leak from downtown. Taking that same equation and multiplying it times the growth in the tourist, the growth in the workforce, and the growth in the visitor, we find that in the next 20 years, we'll add another $321 million in spending to the Rochester community, to the Rochester MSA. So what does that mean? That means if you're an existing retailer, you have an opportunity right now to capture that 118 million that's here. Whether that's shifting your merchandise mix to reflect some of the needs and wants that we found in the RDA survey and the DMC survey, whether that's dipping the toe in the pool of a pop-up, doing an experiential pop-up, or if you're a national retailer, opening a store here. A few more important things when I speak about a national retailer is that the national retailers that are located downtown have 21% greater sales per square feet. So while we've had retailers here that have had a strong independent retailers that are here that have had a strong 20-year run, we also have national retailers that are here that are outperforming their peers. Okay. So with that said, a quick reflection. The customer of downtown Rochester is the person that works here, the person that lives here, and the person that visits here. They have an array of opportunities in 3 different neighborhoods for downtown on 3 different levels of retail downtown. Mike, you want to come up here and you can speak a bit more about the retail landscape and kind of the current state of downtown. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'll introduce I'm sorry, you were introduced already, but Mike Bush from Paramark to tell us a little bit more about the downtown retail landscape.
Thank you, Liz. It's good to be here. My name is Mike Bush. I work with a company called Paramark Real Estate Services. We've been in Rochester since 1971, and we focus on commercial leasing and sales, as well as property management. Our company leases a lot of the downtown property and manages and/or takes care of a number of those properties as well. I was asked by Chris and Patrick to participate in this to give a little broker perspective of what I'm seeing boots on the ground as I'm trying to help landlords lease space and tenants secure space. And, I think it is worth stating that Liz did a really nice job on putting together this piece. I think the vision is that with all of this data and information, she can help us as a brokerage community try to help other folks get situated in Rochester and find reasons to find really good tenants that fit the needs of this growing community. I've been here my whole life, other than when I went away for college. And locals, as most of you know that are local, spend more time working out in the suburb than they do downtown, unless you're a healthcare worker or you're a patient or visitor downtown. And so there are different perspectives. And, by starting out with some of the positives, we are a growing population overall. And the fact that we have 3.4 million visitors coming to our community, of this little community, I think is fascinating. And it's the point that as a broker, we sometimes have trouble communicating to the rest of the world to get people interested in coming to open up shops here in Rochester. I think there's a tremendous opportunity. The fact that 1,100 market rate units have been developed downtown, I think is phenomenal, because when you think about downtown Rochester as a local, it really has been the healthcare industry servicing patients and visitors. And now that our community has decided to embrace living downtown, we just have that many more locals that are wanting to make this part of their ecosystem. And like Liz said, there's a lot more services that could be provided to some of those locals: grocery services, hardware, et cetera. The hotel growth is phenomenal, and that just means that we have more beds for more patients to come. I think it's very interesting. Mayo seems to be on the track of becoming more and more efficient. I'm hearing this, I don't know if it's factual, but I'm hearing Mayo say, we are seeing more patients because we're becoming more efficient, and we can utilize those hospital beds, hospital rooms, and spaces to get more patients to come through here and be in and out more quickly. I talk to retailers, and they say, whether a patient's here for 2 days or 5 days or 7 days, we still have a shot at selling them some of our goods or services. And so by extension, it makes sense that more visitors, more patients coming through more quickly, still hitting those retail facilities, offers the opportunity to grow some more. I love that we're ranked the best place to live. I love that we have the best hospital in the country. I'm very proud of that, and as all of us that work in this community are, and it's easy to sell that. And Mayo just never seems to stop amazing us. They continue to grow. I was trying to look at the financial numbers of what Mayo had done in 2019, and they had been on an increase. And then obviously in 2020, when they had to shut down their services. There was about a 20 to 25% decline in net revenue for them. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that they weren't seeing patients. When I talk to my friends at Mayo, I'm hearing them doing procedures and surgeries at a fast pace. I'm hearing and seeing them do a lot of business. And when I looked at the financial report for the first and second quarter, Mayo's income and revenue was up significantly. And if they did 13.8 billion in 2020, it looks to me like from the projections, they're going to do about 15 billion, which is significant. While their expenses are increasing, I think it's just relevant that they're doing more business. The not so positive about trying to lease space in Rochester is that a lot of Mayo employees have been sent to work from home, and we don't know exactly when they'll come back. I'm hearing numbers of anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000. And again, that's not an official number that anybody can give me. But as employees are leaving downtown, it makes it a little bit harder to sell to stores. And for those of you that are local, you'll notice that many of the office spaces, there's pretty good vacancy going on. The retail vacancy in Rochester, if I were just to add up all of the retail spaces that I'm aware of that are for lease today, and Liz, you said in your numbers, that's about 500,000 square feet of retail. I came up with about 50 to 60,000 square feet of spaces that are currently ready and available for lease. And I think of those spaces as bound by the castle to the north and to 4th Street by Blue Duck to the south, Broadway to the east, and then to the west, maybe 2nd Avenue. In addition, I think of another part of downtown is over by St. Mary's campus. And I think of what's happening at Miracle Mile and the Avani property and a couple of little spaces across the street from St. Mary's, whether it be the Berkman and or the spot to the north off of 2nd Street. There's about 60,000 square feet over there that's vacant and available for lease. What I find very challenging right now is that COVID put a dent on people wanting to go move about, right? Obviously. And there's been a lot of construction downtown to help improve the downtown landscape. I think people who are looking at setting up shop and opening up retail stores in Rochester from the beginning of the pandemic to now has been paused. And it's hard for me to come up with a lot of examples of companies that are setting up shop, but there are a few bright spots. I think of the old brick the old brick restaurant and pub down at the Kaler Hotel. They did a beautiful storefront. It's gorgeous inside, it's well attended, and they opened up in the middle of the pandemic. And it looks to me like they're thriving. I think of Crave Restaurant, who opened up and right around the pandemic ended up putting lots of money into the space. And every time I'm at that restaurant, I see that people are there, and it's pretty well populated. I think of Blue Duck Kitchen, who has been really a fantastic local operator who went into the Connolly Mass building, and it appeals both to the traveling visitors as well as the locals. These restaurants are doing better than one would expect. And I think there's opportunity for some more that are health related, like Liz was suggesting. And I think of that Peace Plaza. The Jerk Chicken restaurant really hasn't made it through the pandemic, but I think there's an opportunity to open up a restaurant either there or in that Wells Fargo building. Some of the other challenges that I have observed is that because tenants have been struggling to pay their rents and many landlords had to work out deals with them to keep them in place, sometimes they abated their rent altogether, and other times they just deferred their rent out to the months in the future as a payback plan. A number of the people that I've talked to in Rochester that are downtown in those shops said 2020 was horrible, and it's taken them a while to recover. What I'm hearing now, which is positive, is that many of them have said, we're almost back to our 2019 numbers. And because we see Mayo doing well, because we start to see the patients coming back, we believe that there is some hope for us to survive and make it. The people that I talk to downtown tell me that they are selling mostly, to people that are travelers. I think of like the shops at University Square. Most of those people are selling to the visitors that are coming in and out of the hotels, whereas the restaurants are selling to locals and travelers. As Mayo increases their patient load and as Mayo increases their people coming to town, it's just going to be easier to rent those spaces. The other kind of bright spots that I think are worth noting is there's some retail going on around Kathy's. I think of Nora's shop, the Threshold Arts. She's done a really nice job there. There's a great entrepreneur, Maggie Panetta, who's doing some good work over at Tree Dome. And I walked into her shop over the Saturday local business, and she's got a great vintage shop. They're selling really cool shoes, they're selling t-shirts, they're selling records, and it's got a good, neat feel to it. That strip is kind of coming along where Payne Furniture used to be. I also want to point out that there's a Janky Gear that opened up just recently out at the Queen City spot, and there's also the Fitloon, which has opened up. So there's these businesses that are actually kind of taking some risk and willing to spend their capital. The challenge that I'm seeing, another challenge is that rents are falling for landlords because of the vacancy, because of the pandemic, because of landlords trying to fill up their spaces. They're only able to they're charging less. And at the same time, I'm seeing expenses, the common area maintenance and the real estate taxes are going up. And to complicate matters, the other thing that we see is that construction costs are going through the roof. So if a new tenant wants to open up shop, it's costing them a lot more per square foot to build out their spaces. Those economics don't work very well. And so I'm really encouraged to hear that there are these $3 million that could be potentially utilized to help get these businesses started up and put some capital dollars into the spaces that are vacant and turn them over. Now that the Peace Plaza has been completed, I think that core where Chester's and the Wells Fargo and Jerk Chicken and the whole Kaler Hotel area, those are where the primary vacancies are. And I think those are the biggest opportunities. The thing that gives me encouragement is that because prices are lower as it relates to rents, landlords are more flexible. I think as a broker, we're going to have a better chance of attracting people in the next year. Thank you for your time, and I'll pass the microphone off to Patrick.
Thank you, Mike, Liz, and Chris. Really helpful and informative, and I really appreciate both the optimism that gets presented through the documentation that Liz is preparing and the sort of reality and challenges and ideas about how to navigate to successful solutions that we hear from Mike and many other brokers as we interact in this work. I think it's fair to say, Chris, that the material that Liz presented is soon going to be available for the entire community to use, brokers, landlords, et cetera. So this report that she presented is being designed as a platform that you all can use, agnostic to any particular space. Of course, you might be pitching a particular location or a particular opportunity. This is really a platform tool that will be available to everybody that you might customize for any particular piece of real estate or location or retail space that you are promoting. So, and it will evolve, and we can update it, and we'll update it. Really intended as a service to the property owner and landlord community, but also to our local community, to our local businesses who are really trying to understand how do they adjust, how do we adjust in these changing times. They're too busy running their day-to-day operations to really necessarily have access to all of this information of how the world is changing around them. So enabling or supporting businesses understanding how, as Liz said, they may have to rethink their merchandising or presentation. And also businesses that are thinking about taking a risk. If you listen to the description that Mike had of the 20 or so businesses that have opened during the pandemic, 20 or so businesses that have started up and opened in the downtown during the pandemic. Most of them, the profile of them are mostly locals. They're risk takers. They are low cost of entry. They're innovators. So when you think about who is occupying and moving into our downtown, that's really the kind of profile that we want to look for and support. And perhaps the $3 million Main Street grant that we received only as a conduit, it's not for us, it's for the community, can help be one of those tools that support those innovators. So with that, I want to turn to our next presentation. We're going to hear from Tom Fisher, former Dean of the College of Design at the University of Minnesota, and now Director of Minnesota Design Center. He's a board member of Destination Medical Center Economic Development Agency. He is a well-regarded, well-known national speaker and futurist. He has a forthcoming book about the post-pandemic city. I am looking for Tom so I can know where, there we are, Tom. So please join me in welcoming Tom Fisher.